to the penultimate episode of the Purple Rock for this season. I am John. This is my co-host, Andy. And we are, sadly, Andy, just 3-4 days. I can't even mark my calendar through all these tiers. We're almost to the final.
Yeah, and it's kind of feeling like it's winding down. It's been a really exciting season. We've had a lot to talk about. I'm glad we didn't try to start this, podcast and say Survivor Nicaragua or something. But I kind of think it's almost fait accompli at this point. How about you?
As I've said all season, I do not want to jinx anything that may be going on here because there does seem to be a pretty clear writing-on-the-wall conclusion. And it's like the no-hitter in baseball thing. You don't want to talk about it if it's happening.
Yeah, and I think this is a good episode of Survivor. It wasn't a spectacular episode like we've had for the past couple, but they did good job in drawing out drama from kind of garden variety situations. But at the end of the day, what happened was exactly what you would have thought had happened. In fact, exactly what you and I thought would happen when we recorded last week.
Yeah, we're pretty good at this predictions business, especially good at the predictions business when we go back and edit the old episodes to make it look like all our predictions were correct.
If we do this next season, we should have a scoreboard, because I think I would have won.
You probably would, if only because I was so down on Sierra for 95% of the season.
And for most of that season, I was telling you that you were not going to get an episode where she wasn't in the game, and guess what? I was right.
You were. Sierra makes it to the finale, and just to jump ahead a bit, she wins her very first, and let's just go out on a limb and say it, her only immunity ever.
That's the one thing that I've been wrong about, because I've been continually predicting that she could never win. And now I'm looking at the scoreboard, and she has more individual wins than Tyson this season.
Oh, you're right. Tyson hasn't won an immunity, has he?
She actually also might have tied Tyson's all-time immunity record.
Although, to Tyson's credit, I think, A, he has the shoulder injury, but B, I don't know that he's really going all out. I think he definitely was in tonight's challenge. I don't know that in some of these challenges he's really been giving it his all, though.
So do shoulder injuries, I'm not a doctor, so I'm just asking, do shoulder injuries prevent you from spelling? Is that a thing?
I'm pretty sure. I mean, I know that sometimes when I'm in the gym and I tweak my shoulder, I can't write for the rest of the day. It's almost like it makes me dyslexic.
So yeah, I was obviously very excited when that happened. I actually literally got up on my feet and pumped my fist. I forgot about puzzles. Puzzles were the one area, they're the great equalizer. I think we never really gave her any credit for puzzles because she was getting smoked in puzzles at the beginning. But now I started to think that might have been more about her competition than herself. Like, she might be okay at puzzles, whereas her mom, as indicated by everything we've seen since then, might be amazing at them.
Yeah, I like that the puzzle win, by the way, was one of Probst's silly little gimmicks that he says. His challenge encouragement that he likes to spout out as they're competing in the challenges. That was a nice touch.
Yeah, maybe Sierra knew it because he's always shouting it at her alongside, Sarah's really sucking right now.
Yeah, it should have been something like, you are a total failure, you're costing your team immunity. And then Sierra would have gotten it right away.
Hey, speaking of Probst's, views and challenges, also interesting this season, there's been 7 individual immunities, and 5 of them have been won by women.
Oh, Probst is going to have to do what we do and go back and edit that out then.
And there's been, almost every Redemption Island challenge has been won by a woman in first place. If it's not Laura M., it was Candace early on. So, maybe those big manly men aren't so hot in Survivor anymore.
Girl power, Andy. Girl power.
All right, so yeah, we jumped ahead to the immunity win because it was an exciting moment for me, and this is what everybody wants to hear. Honestly, I'm expecting when we finish recording to just see a bunch of congratulations for me in our Twitter account.
Whole lot of patting on your back.
I mean, I'm sure Sierra got some, but mostly for me. It was me and Sierra out there doing it together.
Yeah, she couldn't have done it without you, Andy.
So let's go back to the beginning. Kind of the first semi-interesting thing is they get back from that really awesome tribal council, and they're all still like, man, I can't believe that craziness happened. And through the course of it, Tyson finally does what we've been talking about all season, whether he should or he shouldn't. He let his alliance know that he had the immunity idol. What are your thoughts on that?
At this point, probably doesn't matter either way, because other than this vote, which he didn't end up using the idol for. That's all that it really matters for, was this specific vote, because next time he's going to play it anyway. So it's kind of like, if he can lock up Monica's vote there, then it doesn't matter because he's just going to play it at Final Five, and it doesn't matter who knows about it at that point.
Yeah, so there was a secret scene last week that for some reason I watched, and Tyson basically laid out his plan is that he'll reveal it near the end if he has to in order to calm his alliance down from doing any kind of crazy vote splitting. In fact, I think he even called out Monica in that because as later this episode will show, he really does like saying bad things about Monica behind her back.
You think?
So yeah, exactly. That's why you do it. In fact, even earlier in the season, when he was going back and forth, it's like the reason why you might have to tell your alliance you have an idol is just so they don't screw around and get you voted out by vote splitting or anything like that.
Right.
But do you think that this could hurt him? Monica didn't seem that happy that that knowledge was withheld from her.
Yeah, but I don't know if you noticed, Andy, but Monica is not great at Survivor.
Yeah.
As Tyson so eloquently put it this episode, Monica, just not great at Survivor. I mean, that really sums it up in one sentence.
Yeah, I think if Tyson had his choice and that to reveal, it would have been in a different matter, you know? Like, hey, I just found the idol, we're good. But I think at that moment, when Monica was doing exactly what he was worried about happening, in fact, it was really weird that she continued to do it even after he told her he had the idol. He just kind of had to lay it out there.
Yeah, it was kind of like all right, just shut up. I have the idol. Just shut up. Let me go to sleep.
Yeah, that was probably mostly it. He was just freaking tired.
Right.
So the next event was Redemption Island, and yeah, who cares?
Yeah, Laura won. Hooray. She gave the clue to Sierra. Doesn't matter. Nothing's coming of that.
Yeah, it's the only thing of interest. The actual challenge itself, not interesting at all. I don't even care about the drama of, mother versus daughter. Actually, I have one point on that, is that with Tina doing the job and taking out her daughter, and Sierra voting out her mom, and even something a little lower scale, Jervis voting out who by all indications is his really good friend Inaris, I think that speaks really well of the evolution of Survivor at this point. Like, people treat this for what it is. It's a game.
Yeah, there's still the occasional people that slip through the cracks that take it way too personally, but for the most part, we've arrived at a point after 26 seasons already in can that people just have started to appreciate this for what it is. No one's going to get pissed at you for beating them at Monopoly. You shouldn't get too pissed if they beat you at Survivor.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe it's just a small sample size and it's this group of players, but I'm very happy about this because it's kind of the way I've been watching the show for a while now. I'm not going to say from the beginning. From the beginning, I was caught up in the narrative, plucky Pagong against, those jerky others. But yeah, after you think about it, watch it, especially from the comfort of your own couch, it's like this is just a game. It's a game that everybody signed up to play, and winning or losing isn't a statement of you as a human. I think there's caveats to that. There's a way that you can play the game that actually does kind of reflect poorly on you, but it's not a way of like winning the game. It's just doing things like being a jerk for no reason. But getting back to this episode, the only thing that was kind of interesting to me about the whole Redemption Island thing is, so after Laura wins, she gives Sierra the clue, and there's Tina cheering her on, like, yeah, find that idol, and Hayden, win that challenge. And it's just kind of like, so that was kind of way in the open there for Tina to be just blatantly cheering for Hayden and Sierra, which makes me think, how confident still are you that Tyson could beat anybody in the final three?
I'm not really worried about Tina's vote. I don't think Tina's vote, well, I would say I don't think it's going to Tyson, but that all depends on if this final three sticks together and it is Tyson, Jervis, and Monica, then I think maybe her vote does go to Tyson. What other option does she have at that point?
Yeah, no, I mean, if it's the final three that our predictions are going to say that they are, then it won't matter. But if Hayden were to sneak through, and I suppose that's still a possibility, or if Sierra were to sneak through, no, I'm not sure Tyson beats them with this jury. Now, here's the thing. It could be that Tina was more cheering for her own self-interest at that point. In fact, I think it's likely that it's less that she wants Hayden or Sierra to win the game. It's more that she wants them to exist to be future allies of her should she come back. So I think there's a little bit of both in play. But I saw interviews with Caleb that says that he's still pulling. Well, obviously he's pulling for Hayden, but he was also still pulling for Sierra, and that's why he didn't call her out when he was at Redemption Island last week when he was saying people in Utah and Philly, their words mean nothing. So ultimately this is academic because I don't really think it'll come down to it, but there's still a possibility that there's a Final 3 scenario that Tyson doesn't win.
Yeah, but let's save that for our predictions.
All right, so Sierra wins the immunity, against all odds, and she gets to pick one person to go on the reward challenge, and she chooses her ally of the past day, Hayden.
The Hay
what do you
Train.
think of that move?
You got to pick the Hay Train.
They got nicknames for each other. They're best buds now.
Yeah, well, it's a friendship and a bond that was formed over a very difficult 4-hour period, Andy. So it's basically unbreakable.
People
at this
bond
point.
over rocks. We've bonded over rocks. We know the draw of rocks.
It's a very good point. The rocks do bring people together.
I kind of, when I was saying this, and just to show everybody that I'm not totally in the bag for Sierra, I typed on my notes. She seems to always be one move too late. She's ready to flip on Tyson and Jervis. A week after, it would have been really easy to do so. She's all on board for Hayden right after she can't. It's time to flip Monica. Oh no, it's too late. Oh, let's go find that idol. Oh, I already gave that clue to Tyson.
Yeah, womp womp, Sierra. So close, but yet so far.
Now, in her defense, this isn't her third time playing the game, so.
I think she might at least get a second, but we'll probably discuss that after the finale episode.
But yeah, so taking Hayden on the reward, is it the right move, the wrong move? It doesn't really matter. What?
Doesn't matter in the least. I think she could have taken Monica to try to work her there, but I think that also makes it a little too obvious, and it would have felt a little bit too much like pandering at that point. So, you know what? May as well give Hayden some food. You're going to enjoy your last day on the island there together.
Yeah, my initial instinct was, oh, you should try for Monica, but as soon as I was thinking, it was like, that's a way too obvious. Like, I don't think it would work at all. People would know what she was doing. Monica would know what she was doing. So that's a move that could have worked, 2 weeks ago or something. But at this point, yeah. And here's the thing. If by some miracle she found herself in the final 3, she might have just won Hayden's vote with this.
Maybe. Actually, despite what the alliances that we're seeing now are. Maybe you agree with me on this. I think that Hayden, in the end, does vote for Tyson.
I think Hayden's up for grabs. I think he would be willing to go either way when maybe he'd be one of those elusive players who actually pays attention at Tribal Council. It'll also, I think, kind of depend on what the mood of the other people are. And I have no read on, say, Aris and Vetus, other than I don't think they're going to vote Jervis. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, the whole reward choice, I think, is kind of one of those things that didn't matter. I don't think there was a move anybody could have made that would have really affected anything. So, yeah, sure, have a meal with somebody you like, at least have that moment, like, we won and you didn't.
Right, and we eventually get to the Sierra conversation with Monica anyway, so it didn't need to be at that reward challenge. At the reward. The actual reward. There's no reward challenges this season. Thanks, Redemption Island.
Yeah, and it's too bad because they're still trying all the tricks to break alliances, but it's just so much different when the person making the choice is immune.
Right, but after their little talk, Monica actually does seem to be just falling for Sierra's plan and playing right into it and saying, oh, I can't believe Tyson and Jervis would say that about me. Which, of course, we as viewers know is totally true. They have been saying it about her. I don't think they're the only ones that have been saying it about her. But Sierra has Monica believing that they are the only ones that are saying it about her.
Yeah, I was actually wondering how much of what Sierra was saying was true and how much was embellishment. Because some of it certainly was true. And I think the line that Hayden kept pushing about, her being on a leash and a lapdog, I mean, I think we've actually heard Tyson say that, so I have no doubt that he was also saying it to people. But I wonder if some of the other things she was just kind of pushing it. And what is your take on that? How do you feel about kind of intentionally hurting somebody's feelings in order to win them over?
You know what would have just absolutely sold this season for me and just vaulted it probably into the top 3 ever is if at that tribal council, as they're saying, Tyson was saying all these things, if Tyson had just said, hang on a minute, go back and watch what I said about Sierra and Tocantins and tell me this was anywhere near as bad.
And that would have been confusing. People would have been like, Sierra wasn't in Tocantins.
Totally different Sierra, Andy.
I'm not sure that really matters to the person. Oh, so you weren't quite as monstrous to me as you were when we first saw you on television.
I'm only saying...
Oh, wait a second. So I remember now, this whole nice Tyson thing does not compute with my earlier impression of you.
I'm only saying that for me, it would have sold me on the season. It probably would have cost Tyson the game, but I would have found it amusing if he brought back memories of his awfulness towards Sierra. And really, I actually did watch some YouTube clips of it fairly recently. It's pretty bad, but I gotta say I laughed. I felt a little bit bad laughing because he does seem to pile on to her. But I think that's just kind of the jerky guy Tyson is, where it's sort of humorous jerky. It wouldn't bother me, but it did seem to bother Sierra somewhat.
Yeah, I'll let you in on a secret. I actually thought Tyson was a jerk back then. And not like an offensive way to me, but like, this is dumb. Sierra basically it's kind of my always thing. Don't be a jerk on Survivor because it could cost you winning. It's just bad strategy. Forget about morality. You never know when that person who you think is useless to your alliance suddenly becomes the most important part of it because of some kind of tribal swap and all that. And, I mean, it didn't really matter with Sierra. They were able to vote her out, but, Tyson went home a lot earlier than he thought he was going to go in that season.
That's true. She actually lasted a little bit longer than he did. And it is confusing to be talking about the Tocantins Sierra versus this season's Sierra. But he had perhaps my favorite moment of that season, which I rewatched this week as well. Probst asks him something about the people he loves in this game, and I guess Tyson had mentioned one person that he loved, and Probst calls him on it, and Tyson says, "Oh no, I love more than just one person." Probst says, "Who do you love?" He names every single other person left in the game, including the person in the jury, except for Sierra. And it is comedy gold. It's also awful.
Yeah, so it could have fit him in the butt tonight. It didn't, though. And honestly, I didn't think it was going to. Maybe next on Sunday. But again, I don't think it's going to. So yeah, we get to Tribal Council, and they hammer it on Monica pretty hard. Both Sierra and Hayden are pushing one way, and then Tyson and Jervis pushing the other way. And did you think at any point that she flipped? Was the outcome ever in doubt for you?
It was a very valiant attempt, and I have to give Hayden a ton of credit, because actually Sierra, to her credit too, she had and I can't remember which one of them came up with it first, but it was the think of your kids and your husband watching this show, what are they going to think about you argument, because you can just tell that worked with her, because she really wants to, when she's winning her challenges, who cares about winning challenges, but she sees that as, oh, look at me, I'm going to show Brad how he's not the only, physical threat in this family. So working that angle on her in Tribal, I think, was their best possible strategy. It didn't succeed, but again, sometimes great strategies fail.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, why I think this was a good episode, even though the end result was predictable. Again, people on the outside, not willing to just take it. They did the things that we always say people should do. You find that crack and you keep pushing at it, and you keep pushing, and even if you're going to go down swinging at Tribal Council. And I'll admit that I didn't know the way the fifth vote was going to go. I was pretty confident that would go against Hayden, but I wasn't going to put any money down on it. So good job by the editors, but also, good job by Hayden and Sierra. They gave it the old college try. Maybe it was a little uncomfortable that they did so at the, perhaps mental wellness of somebody else out there. But you know what? Monica's a big girl.
Yeah, do you think they laid it on a little too thick?
I think they did, yeah. I think you can only push somebody so hard until they're like, screw you, I'm not going with you. And I think they might have gone that way. But there's a good chance that they pushed that hard because they knew it was a losing battle already before they ever got to Tribal Council.
That's very possible. I mean, obviously, if Monica had already told them before they got there, hey, sorry guys, I'm not going with you, we didn't get to see that. So they might have just been making their last-ditch Hail Mary effort there.
Yeah, and I will say, when Sierra's talked with her earlier, and again, this is edited, we don't know how, it just kind of launched right into that conversation. We don't know how it eased in there. But I think Sierra wasn't as smooth as, I would have liked her to be. She didn't do enough other than talk smack about Tyson, which I think, wasn't a bad play, especially for Monica, who's somebody about loyalty and feelings and stuff. But I don't know if they'd laid out a good enough case for Monica why it would also be a good strategic move.
I just like the idea that we're going to call Monica someone who is all about, quote, feelings and stuff.
And what else is there, really?
Actually, the Monica thing gets us into a good question, because a lot of people, myself included, and I believe you as well, have said earlier this season that she is pretty solidly a GOAT, and the type of GOAT that you want to bring along to the end. We actually got a fascinating email this week that I loved, and you read as well. You want to fill the listeners in on what that email was?
Yeah, so this is one of our followers on Tumblr, goes by the name of Cult Anthropologist, one word, Cult Anthropologist. And, she wanted to know about, for a possible historical discussion topic, memorable GOATs the season past. And she says that she feels like the term GOAT gets thrown around a lot in Survivor fandom, but who are the biggest GOATs, and what makes for an ideal GOAT? And who've been the worst tribal council GOATs. And her votes were for Katie and Palau, or Sherry and Caramoan. And I gotta say, those are two pretty good picks. So, way to take some of the good ones off.
Yeah. Well, there is one very obvious one that she didn't mention, and I can guarantee you that you are thinking of this exact person as well.
This is my very first thought, yeah.
Let's go ahead and rule out Philip.
Yeah, we can't go with Philip. It's too easy, except to say why he's so obvious is that, nobody liked him. He was just crazy. And then he gets to final tribal council, and he was basically telling you, screw you guys, vote for Rob. He literally argued against himself and continued to fight the jury at tribal council. It was pretty spectacular.
Philip was perhaps the first ever, at least that I can recall, completely intentional GOAT. It was almost like he decided, man, I can't wait for that $100,000 that I might get for coming in second.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe he's crazy like a fox there. Maybe he quickly assessed his situation, his social status in the game, and was like, $100,000 would be a pretty big win for me.
He is the specialist.
But yeah, and honestly, actually, some of that behavior I was talking about, Katie from Palau also exhibited. That I think she actually told one of the jurors to go F themselves. And so now I think when going into that, she didn't know that she was, that poorly viewed. But once she saw the tables turn, and I guess one thing that would not make Katie necessarily the goatiest GOAT is that it didn't matter. She was facing Tom Westman. Like, he didn't need a GOAT.
Yeah, he really didn't. He had that thing locked up just about whoever he went against.
I mean, Ian, I think, would have drawn some votes, but Tom would have won.
Right.
So, yeah, we can't go with Philip. Who are you going to go with instead?
Mine is actually one that didn't even get to make it to the final three, but if you brought him there, you'd win, and it's Brandon Hantz.
See, when we were having our pre-show discussion, I was like, do we have to just mention people that made it to the finals? Because otherwise, I was thinking Brandon Hantz. And that's clearly what Coach was thinking. It's like, this is my GOAT. This is the guy I'm going to take. I've studied at the foot of Rob, and this is, he'll be my Philip. But then Brandon has to go and give up his immunity at tribal council. What a GOAT.
Yeah, he tried so hard to be a GOAT that he didn't even get the opportunity to be a GOAT in the final episode.
And I think this is speaks positively of that season's winner, Sophie, is that she knew exactly what Coach was up to, and they weren't having none of that. And as soon as Brandon wasn't immune anymore, you get gone.
They got Brandon to give up his immunity.
That was fantastic. Now, what's really weird is that people have spoken after the fact that, like, at that time, they thought that he might have challenged for jury votes. Yeah, it does not compute to me. Maybe they're just saying that because they're worried that he'll, show up at the door.
Yeah, he has their address, so maybe they're watching what they say.
Along those same lines, I'm going to go with somebody who, again, didn't make it to the final, because if he did, he would have been the all-time GOAT of all time. And that's Keith Fammy of Survivor Australia.
And hard to dispute that, because if he had gone, Colby would have won that season.
Yeah, and that's why it's very interesting. It's like, I don't know if people can, conceive of how bad a move that was by Colby. If I laid it out, there's a very good chance that I would say Colby's decision to not take Keith was the dumbest decision in the history of Survivor, because it's the only one that you can point to as the exact moment when somebody lost $1 million. And I don't say that to take any credit away from Tina. It's not that Tina didn't deserve to win. She deserved to win. That's why she did win. That's why Colby should not have taken her. And some people think that, that would have damaged Colby's reputation, that the jury wouldn't have liked it very much. And I'm sure that's true. I think it would have, put a little bit of tarnish on his halo. But it wouldn't have mattered because they wouldn't have voted for Keith.
He would have had a lot of money for polish for that tarnished halo with his $1 million that he would have won.
Yeah, it's not like he gained any points by taking Tina because he lost by 1 vote. Whereas, yeah, there's no way that, okay, maybe he loses a couple votes to Keith in the same way that Brian Heidik in Thailand lost to my other choice for this. Clay.
I was actually going to say that I suspected that your vote for this was going to be Clay.
Yeah. God, I've been talking about that season way too much. Do not think that all this talk that I've been having about Thailand this season is an endorsement. It's a terrible season.
Yeah, stay away.
But yeah, ultimately, you don't get to abstain in a final vote. So those people would have cast their vote for Colby whether they wanted to or not. Like, Jerry Manthey is not voting for Keith.
Agreed. So we actually got one final question in just under the wire. Actually, we put out notice that we were recording, and I got a question from Joseph Finn from AV Club. He says, what are Sierra's chances to win in the final 3? I think I know your answer, but I'll let you go first on this.
Honestly, get there, which I think are low odds. I think if she got there, then just reading the way the jury is and just her really exciting underdog arc, and I think she could win. But I have a hard time seeing how she gets there. So obviously she has to get by the first vote. So what happens is somebody's going to come back from Redemption Island. The odds-on favorite is her mother, and if not her mother, then Hayden. So either person would be more than willing to pair with her. I think it would be better for her odds if it's her mother, because, Monica already wasn't willing to flip to her and Hayden once, but maybe Monica would flip to her and her mom, given a little bit more time. But I don't think so. So, yeah, then it's survive that vote. I think you can. I think everybody would just try to vote out whoever came back from Redemption Island between her, mom, or Hayden. But I just don't see how she gets past that final 4. And, yes, she won an immunity. And you know what? Maybe she could win one other immunity. Maybe she is just better at puzzles than those other, 3 people now, or 4 people. Although I guess if she was up against her mom, she's not winning that puzzle.
That's right.
Although I could see her mom giving up immunity for her. But the final 4 isn't going to be a puzzle. The final 4, they make you earn it. And I don't see one of those that she could win, especially since they already did the light person with tiny feet stay up on a pole for a long time challenge.
Yeah, unless it was some sort of blend into the background for the first 10 episodes of the season challenge, then I don't see a way that she could win this.
Yeah, except that, of course, she didn't do that, and she was a presence throughout, which is why I was talking about her, and trying to actually figure out why the edit was giving some level of attention to someone who they would normally ignore. And I think that question's been answered. I don't think it was at some kind of stealth winners edit or anything like that. I think she factored heavily into this exciting part of the season.
She did.
She was the one that voted out her family member. She's the one who forced a rock situation. She's the one that worked hard to try and flip the vote now. She was a character this season, one of the 3 most prominent. But to win, she'd have to get there, and that's tough. I mean, the other answer is maybe Monica, after having... I said this last week, I'm not sure if you agreed with me or not, that this wasn't the week for Monica to flip.
Right, and I agreed with that at the time, I believe, and I think that even more strongly now. Monica, I think the best move for her is to flip, but not tonight.
Yeah, so she flips tonight, then she goes from guaranteed final 3 to the 4th in a 4-person alliance. That's not a good situation. And just as much as she would lose to Tyson in a final vote, she'd lose to Hayden. But, maybe she could be convinced that she could beat Sierra and Laura, especially if in Monica's mind, Sierra, the weakling who could barely contend at anything, isn't worth Survivor because that's the lens through which she views the game. So if Monica flips and they vote Jervis, because, again, Tyson's immune, and Monica knows that. And then Tyson doesn't win the final 4, then there you go. That's how Sierra wins.
Right, that's basically, I think that's the path for Monica getting to the end and potentially winning as well. Because I think she doesn't stand a chance against Tyson and Jervis. She probably doesn't stand a chance against Sierra and Laura, but at least they would potentially have the benefit of Sierra and Laura splitting some votes, and maybe Monica gets in that way. It's really hard to envision a scenario where she could win, but Sierra in that final 3 would win. She would beat her mom, she would beat Monica.
And it's not so much about being Jervis. I think, again, Jervis isn't going to win against anybody. He's just, I think, too volatile when the chips are down. And here's the thing, tonight I thought some of his counter arguments were good. It's just they weren't done in a calm manner.
Yeah, executed very poorly.
Yeah, it's almost Brad Culperian, we're going to say. That the move isn't wrong, but it's all about execution. And he was just a little bit too angry, and I don't think it plays well for the jury, especially for an overdog. An underdog can get away with that sort of thing, but when you're sitting in the driver's seat and you're responsible for the exits of those other people, I think they want to see a little bit of grace.
Yeah, you just look like the big bully picking on the innocent little underdog that you're about to kick out of the game.
80-pound woman, yeah.
Right.
So, I think if Sierra could get there, I think she has a good chance against anybody. I'm not saying that she could definitely beat Tyson, but I can see some jury votes there depending on their mindset of the jury. And maybe even, if she has a good performance and Tyson doesn't. I would still probably put the odds for Tyson in that, but, she could challenge him. She's something that Tyson doesn't want to face. But I just don't see how she could get there. Other than, and again, I don't think she can win Final Four immunity. So Monica has to flip the next fight.
Agreed. And before we get to our predictions for this week, I can't even call it this week because the finale is at the end of this week's next episode. I actually did manage to record an interview earlier today with a famous AV clubber. So let's casually slide that into this episode right now. And we'll come back. All right, our guest tonight is an AV Club celebrity because he is the winner of the very first season Survivor League that we did. He happened to pick Cochran with the first overall pick, and his name is Adam B. Adam, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be on here.
Well, first of all, Adam, we like to ask pretty much every guest that comes on the show what their experience with Survivor has been, and have you seen all the seasons of the show?
I have not seen all the seasons of the show. There are a couple about, at this point, halfway through, sort of around Gabon and China that I missed, but I was there from the very beginning. Back in 2000, when the show began, I was dating someone who was a features writer for the local paper. So she got on the show very quickly. We both were hooked on it, as were most of America, and we watched the first season finale from the official gathering that they had downtown at a waterfront bar. We were watching it with, I remember, Will Mega from the first Big Brother season. It was a whole to-do, people shocked and appalled when Richard won. And so I've been in on the show, since the very beginning.
That is an odd thing now when you look back that everyone was so appalled at Richard winning. And I was in that camp at the time too. I was like, oh man, that terrible person. And it's only in retrospect that you look back and think, oh, thank God he won.
Chuck Klosterman wrote about this because he did a sort of fantasy survivor speech in one of his collections of essays where he talked about the fact that jury made a choice which determined the entire arc of the show. Because if one vote flips, if Kelly wins season 1, then Survivor is a show in which people are judged based on their survival skills and based on how they do in challenges and what they contribute to the tribe. And all the strategic stuff that Richard did, would be seen as wasteful. Richard wins, and that legitimizes Survivor as being a show about strategy and gameplay first, and not necessarily about how nice of a person you are. And of course, the other competitors didn't get to see all of what he was saying about them in the interview segments. But that one vote, because it was a 4-3 decision, that changed the way that Survivor was going to be seen going forward.
Right, and I tend to think, and I've said this for a long time, but if the show had Kelly winning in that first season, I don't think this show makes it more than 3, maybe 4 seasons total.
I agree. It's the strategy which hooks you in. Just seeing good-looking people, brave challenges, that's not enough for a sustaining television show. In the same way that for American Idol, just watching good singers, it gets tired sometimes. At a certain point, you have seen every single version of Whitney Houston's I Have Nothing that you could ever care to see.
I will take your word on that. I'm not an American Idol viewer, so it would all be new and fresh to me. So another question that Andy and I have discussed, and it doesn't always make the show, but how do you think you would do if you were actually on Survivor?
I would be pretty darn bad at it. I am not a challenge person. I would be really good at puzzle-related things, and to the extent that engineering is involved, these sort of, okay, how do you tie the sticks together to make a pole that will actually reach something? I think I could be creative and interesting at that. I think I'd have a decent strategic game, but in terms of the endurance stuff, I am not there, and I would be bad at it.
Do you think the Cochran and Sierra performances the past 2 seasons have, given you any sort of hope?
The Cochran season has, to a certain extent. I mean, because he really did start to gut it out and do exceptionally well in some of the immunity challenges. But I'm not built the way that he is. While we're both nerdy lawyers, we're nerdy lawyers with slightly different athletic builds, and I am not that confident. I mean, I'll tell you this, before I went out there, I would sure as hell learn how to light a fire without a flint. I would be smart about the skills that I would develop in advance of getting onto the show.
So you're saying if you were on Cook Islands, you would not have been screwed in that Final Four fire making challenge?
God willing, no, and especially, after having been out there for a month, I would have figured out how to restart a fire by that point.
At least with the matches, maybe you could pull it off by then. Come on.
Oh my goodness, the matches. You watch the show enough seasons, you think you've seen everything, and then you get something like that, and it really just makes you smile.
Yeah, if the show had become one of those shows that Kelly could win, those people would have been gone on day 3 and day 6.
Oh, absolutely, because then it would be a show where you would get rid of people based on the fact that they weren't contributing to the tribe. Of course, I mean, the whole arc of the show since the beginning has been diminishing the extent to which survival skills actually matter. How are you at fishing? How are you at building shelter? How are you at building fire and, foraging and stuff like that? They're not given lavish buffets every day, but you don't see them starving the way they were in Africa.
Yeah, it is funny, though, that there is still a segment of viewers that cling to those things. I mean, there's still people that think, oh, it's such an unethical thing to blindside people and lie to them, and just different people watch this show in vastly different ways, and it's fascinating to me.
I have trouble wrapping my head around that, the idea that sort of you've made it to this point and you're offended by the fact that people are playing Survivor as a game. Well, then again, I'm also surprised that there are people for whom this is their first season, but I guess it is. It's sort of, okay, I guess there's nothing else on Wednesdays at 8 at this point. Hey, here's that Survivor thing I've been hearing about for a long time. Let me give it a go. So,
yeah, I like the idea that someone took 14 years before they finally said, you know what, I'm going to watch this show for the very first time 13 years after it premiered.
I wonder how the show plays for new people. I mean, how much Probst actually gives them in the early episodes that explains the way the game works. I mean, if you go back and you watch the first season in particular, I mean, obviously it's the first season, so they have to explain everything, but there is so much narration and guiding in terms of the importance of building a shelter, the importance of forming a civilization out of nothing. And none of that's there now. It's sort of reduced and boiled down to the core gameplay, and that's what it's about.
So on that front, obviously you haven't seen all the seasons of the show, but of those that you have seen, what would you say is your favorite, and why is that? Probably
Heroes versus Villains, because the level of strategic game is so high, because the characters who are in there, in whom, we've invested so much over the years and had such high expectations. There was tremendous rooting interest during that season. I love the way it ended. I love the fact that Sandra won again. I think that her gameplay is just fascinating to me.
You don't have to convince me. I'm a total Sandra apologist.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of a season without All-Stars in it, without returning players in it, my favorite is either Pearl Islands or Palau. I think both of them have a lot to go for it. I mean, obviously in Pearl Islands you have these huge personalities in Johnny Fairplay and Rupert who are just, casting coups, just like, totally great people to have on the show. And Palau I love just because the arc of that season, this sort of Shakespearean 2-act play, in Act 1, the one tribe just completely disintegrates until they're down to just Stephanie, and then in Act 2, the dominant tribe cleaves in two and turns on each other, and ending with this amazing final immunity challenge between Tom and Ian on the buoys. I love Palau. I think it's a fantastic season.
The one thing that I think really separates Palau is I don't think we'll ever have that again. Despite our prediction earlier in the season that Andy was saying we might actually get that this season, just the odds are so stacked against one tribe losing every single challenge that I don't think it's going to happen that we'll see that again.
Well, I mean, what are the odds of one tribe losing 6 challenges in a row? It's 2 to the 6th power. It's 1 in 64 times that should happen. But that's if it's a 50-50 chance. If one tribe has more skill than the other, then yeah, it's going to happen every once in a while. But still, you would have to think that random luck is going to lead to different outcomes than this. It was just hysterically funny and interesting and dramatic the way that tribe just got whittled down to Bobby John and Steph.
Yeah, that's up there in my top seasons as well. So I'm fairly certain that I agree with you on heroes versus villains being the number one. I've gone back and forth on this because there's a couple that are in contention, but it's really hard to argue against that season. There are so many great players in that, and the strategy in that season, hard to top.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the triple idol play, you've got the fantastic, the letter to Russell, and of course Russell's behavior, which encouraged its being sent in the first place. I mean, he acted the hell out of his situation, and it worked. It was just brilliant. And then the situation with the, split votes, to try to flush out immunity idols and then getting Tyson to flip on his vote to change the outcome. I mean, there's just so much going on in that season when you have everybody who knows how to play the game. I don't know if we're going to see something like that again.
Yeah, and in hindsight, yes, JT's move was so stupid, but that's us being the omniscient audience here. We know who Russell is and what Russell is like. JT doesn't, so it was a Hail Mary and it fell short. It just, again, it looks really bad because of the outcome, but I think it's still semi-defensible as a strategy in that season.
I mean, look, if you're in a situation in which you're going to lose based on where you are, it's worth trying something else. I think also about Cochran's flip in the first season in which he competed. I mean, nobody really cares whether you finish 11th versus 6th. The goal is to get before the final council. So if your risky move is played earlier in the game versus later, I don't see that as being a meaningful difference. You play your meaningful moves when it's time to play them, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
So speaking of strategy on playing moves, you are an AV Club commenter, as are Andy and I. One of the things that often comes up in the AV Club, we tend to discuss almost every week. There comes some strategy discussion, and we'll debate whatever the particular moves of that week were. So what do you think is the ideal way for an alliance leader to manage that alliance to make it to the end?
I mean, it's what we're seeing now. I mean, first of all, have your alliance set. Know who your 3 or 4 people are. Be confident in them, share in the decision making with them, and as long as you know that they're all on the inside, cede some authority to them in terms of who's going to get eliminated in any given week. I think it's also important to make sure that the people on the bottom of your alliance, or sort of who think they're in your alliance but are actually on the outside, to not make them realize that they're not in the core. I mean, one of the brilliant things that Boston Rob did in that All-Stars season was that there were probably 4 or 5 people who thought that they were the third person in a Rob and Amber alliance. So you have to work hard to give everybody else the confidence that they're really in your core. What else you need to do? I mean, you need to win challenges. Having the numbers is one thing, but winning immunity and ensuring that you can get rid of your target on a weekly basis is an important thing. And then the last thing I would say is know what your story is before you get before the final jury. Whatever you do, be able to live with your decisions, justify them, recognize that this is a game, and that if you treat it as such, if you explain your decisions within the context of the game, in almost all seasons, there's going to be a majority of jurors who will respect that.
At least those are the seasons that I tend to like. I do waver on exactly how influential final jury arguments tend to be, though. And Andy got into this a little bit with me last week. I mean, a lot of credit's often given to Todd for his spectacular final jury performance in China, which I realize you haven't seen. I have seen it, and it was, to his credit, pretty good. I think he did probably sway 2 votes at the end. And Amanda's spectacular crash and burning probably swayed another vote. So I think it does factor in. I think some seasons more than others.
I think it's easier to lose votes with a bad jury performance and win them with a great one. You know, you think about people like Lil, for example, who had a moral problem with the way that they had treated others in the game, and if you're spending your final jury apologizing, you're not going to win.
Right, and I would agree with that. It's much easier to lose votes than it is to win them. It's way easier to offend somebody or otherwise alienate them in some way right at that moment where you're trying to get them to give you $1 million.
Yeah, you want them to respect you, and you want to, you know, the greatest thing to always say in a jury is, I had to get rid of you because you were too much of a threat. Because you were so good at this game, I knew that I couldn't beat you, so I had to outwit you. And I got lucky and I was able to do that.
And spoiler alert, that is the exact argument that Todd makes to one of the players in Survivor China. And it totally works.
Yeah, and it'll work, you know, presumably for Tyson coming up on Sunday, you know, that he'll be able to say, I got rid of you because I saw the numbers that you were putting together. I knew what you could do in immunity challenges, and I could tell that you were starting to move against me, so I had to move against you first.
Yeah, I think we started to see some of the cracks in the Tyson armor in tonight's episode, though. Apparently he hasn't been quite as airtight with his mocking comments as we're kind of led to believe by some of the things we've seen this season. I had thought he was maybe restricting them to confessionals, but apparently he's let a few fly in front of the rest of the players out there.
I mean, I think it's hard when you're out there for a month to be that disciplined. It's not a human way to interact with others. I mean, you want to spill, you know, information is currency, and you want people to be entertained by you. You want them to like you, and talking trash is a way to do that.
And speaking of talking trash, that's a beautiful transition that we actually didn't plan for because you didn't know this question was coming. So Andy, who was not available for this interview, but based on your AV Club Survivor draft success, would like to know what your strategy is for those drafts, and he claims that it's get an early pick and use it on a favorite.
Yeah, it's kind of nice the way it works out that way. I mean, obviously I have no say about when I've been able to pick in these drafts, but I mean, with Cochran, I really liked him the first time around, and I wanted to see what he could do this time. And this time, I mean, Tyson, based on how well he's played the game before, especially in comparison to others, it felt like a natural and logical person to choose here. There was part of me that was honestly thinking about Tina another time around, that, you know, outside of the All-Stars environment where everybody was gunning for the former winners, that somehow in this context, you know, enough time had passed that there would be less animus there, and that she would be able to work her social game really well. So I can't say that Tyson was an automatic pick, but he was certainly right around the top of my list the whole time if I had a free choice at this.
Yeah, and obviously I'm very much in the bag for Tyson. And I will say, though, that I'm very glad that we're no longer at the point where being a previous winner makes you an automatic target, just because as a viewer, it makes the season so much less interesting. You know, I would have liked to see how well Tina could have done in Survivor All-Stars and the other winners that they took out immediately. You know, I want to see how those people would do on an even playing field, but in All-Star seasons in general, it's not really an even playing field because of the pregame alliances.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they knew each other so well coming into the game, and there were so many pregame alliances and friendships, and obviously the whole Boston Rob Lex thing, which played such a crucial role in how that game played out, and made it, you know, for really interesting television. But also, it's weird watching a show where so much is based on things that you don't get to see and you just have to infer.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people forget that, including myself every once in a while, that you're only seeing an edit of 40, we'll say 45-ish minutes of generally a 72-hour span. So considering what they can pack into that, you're not going to get the full story, and definitely not both sides of the story in most cases.
Yeah, but at least you're getting a coherent story out of it, and you're recognizing that it may not be the complete truth. But in All-Star seasons, it's complicated by the fact that there is a story that takes place outside of and before the game even started filming that had an impact on how that game was going to play out.
And thanks to various non-disclosure agreements, we'll never get to know the prologue to those stories, although they occasionally hint at it, I think.
Yeah, they do from time to time, but there are a lot of stories about Survivor that we will never know the full truth of. The Stacey Stillman lawsuit seemed to have disappeared at some point, for example, and if there's anybody who I would love to see back on the game at some point, it's her.
I think she might be persona non grata at this point with Survivor.
You would think.
So, back to this season, you sound like you're pretty confident that Tyson's making Final 3. I don't think I could necessarily dispute that, but do you see him as the winner this season?
I do see him as the winner this season. I mean, one step at a time. I mean, number one, is there anybody who could come back from Redemption Island who could flip the dynamics of the game by uniting with Sierra and either Jervis or Monica to get rid of Tyson? I don't see that happening.
I think that would be the only potential strategy to dethrone Tyson, is the person coming back from Redemption partnering with Sierra and, I assume, Monica, and then overthrowing Tyson. But at that specific point, I mean, that'll be a 5-person vote. That'll be his last opportunity to use the idol. So he's going to use it there. That's not the point where he would be gone anyway. So it would have to be Jervis at that point. And again, you're getting into some long shots where will Tyson win the final immunity? He's definitely a very safe bet for Final 3 at this point.
Yeah, and who else has a good story to tell before the jury? I mean, Sierra, kinda, sorta. Monica, because of the challenge wins. Laura, if she comes back and she says, look at what I did at Redemption Island. But, I mean, Tyson's got the best story to tell in terms of playing the game of Survivor in the tribe and controlling the dominant tribe, sort of the traditional way that someone wins this show. He's won this show.
Yeah, and I am very much looking forward to a Tyson Final Tribal Council argument. It should be gold.
It should be a lot of fun.
I'm also kind of looking forward to a potential Monica Final Tribal because, as Tyson noted tonight, she's not great at Survivor.
No, but you know what? She's pretty darn good at challenges, and she can at least talk about that. But, when you get to the questions, which are always asked sort of, what were the big strategic moves that you made in this game? I don't know what she says there. I wonder if she will talk about, because she should, her decision to burn, I think it was 3 different hidden immunity idol clues, and sort of what that said about the way that she saw the strategic game here, and the value or lack thereof of those clues. I mean, that's sort of one of the few choices in the game that she's made that's worth talking about.
I have a feeling that the final tribal edit she'll get, barring a move where she dethrones Tyson on her way to get there, is going to be a lot like Sherry's.
Oh dear.
Just a hunch, but I kind of feel like we're heading for a Sherry 2.0 situation. Maybe not with quite as hostile a jury, but somewhere in that range.
That would not be pleasant, but this is one of those seasons which has had its fair share of ups and downs and interesting strategic play, but in the end you've got this alliance of 3 that has been together and voted together, and they're now just picking people off.
And hopefully right to the final 3. So I guess we'll find out on Sunday.
Well, we have to find out on Sunday, The show's going to end whether they're ready for it too or not.
Despite my desperate pleadings that we just have Tyson on my TV every Wednesday, I guess you're right. It will have to happen this Sunday.
It will, and I'm looking forward to it. Let me ask you this about the finale. Are we getting the March Past the Fallen Comrades this time?
God, I hope not. The ceremony I like to call the Parade of Losers, where we see each person walk past the totem poles representing their fallen comrades. One of the most fast-forward worthy components of any Survivor season. Do you agree?
You see, no, I'm a fan of it. I'm a fan of the trash talk. I'm a fan of, remembering the people who got knocked off in the first couple of weeks. What I don't like, and thankfully they've really moved past this, is the sort of local exoticism, the, anoint yourself in oils and, we're going to have some natives, wave palm fronds at you as you march towards the final thing. I mean, they've gotten rid of all of that, and there really is barely any connection in a season with the actual local culture anymore. I mean, they could be filming these things on any beach.
Yeah, and I actually wonder if that's part of the reason why, is that they've so repeatedly gone back to the same general area these past few seasons that they don't want to make it too painfully obvious that that's what they're doing.
It could be, but also, look, some of it is offensive. I mean, some of it is treating local human beings as not much different than sort of, going to King Kongi where the natives have their whole ceremony in front of the altar and then the giant wall. I mean, it's weird. It's culturally difficult. I mean, I think about sort of the Rent-A-Native stuff that they've done as reward challenges in the past, and it always just gives me the oogies.
I don't think, judging by what I've seen on this show, that Survivor has too much of an issue with exploiting some racial and or cultural stereotypes.
Yeah, no, they definitely, they will do what makes for good television, but what they like in that regard is conflict. But, when we have the, Jeff Probst seminar on the sensitive topic of race, which we did a couple years ago, I mean, they love that stuff.
That was beautifully handled. Good job, Probst. Way to end racism.
He sure did.
All right, well, Adam, thank you very much for coming on with us this week, and I'm looking forward to the finale, and I know you are as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Go Tyson.
So, now that we beautifully segued that interview into this podcast, let's get to our predictions. Who's winning this game?
I'd put the odds at 85% Tyson.
Again, I hate to jinx it, but I might even go 90% Tyson at this point.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the monkey wrench of the Redemption Island person, which I think is not that big a factor because they're coming back at a disadvantage, it's still a thing out there that, maybe entices Monica to flip. But other than that, no. And here's the other thing. Forget about just chances of, which way a jury would go or, who has the best chances of winning, who's played the best game. Nobody's gotten the edit that Tyson's gotten. And if he doesn't win after kind of everything we've seen, the show kind of did a poor job.
Yeah, if nothing else, he got the bulk of screen time this season. And I think the crying last episode thing was a pretty strong indicator that he's getting the win.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's kind of why we didn't have a whole ton to talk about this week, although we still managed to fill up that hour. Is that this episode, went the way it was supposed to, and we're pretty confident the next one will as well. It's just all signals point that way. This episode could have changed that if, there had been a score or a big win. Then I think they would have told enough of a story for either Sierra or Hayden for us to think that way, but it didn't. Tyson wins another one, and he's going to win. And that's cool. He's played a really great game. We'll figure out next week where you'll have to start ranking where it goes, and you'll have to fight your urge of saying, number one, number one, number one.
Yeah, we'll actually, after the finale, we'll get into some discussion about what next season will be, because I've gotten some spoilers. I got some inside info on the makeup of next season, apart from Clifford Robinson being in next season.
Is it tall versus short?
I'm not going to spoil it here, Andy. You got to wait until after Sunday.
All right, so besides the winner, because, again, we both kind of think it is the way that we've been talking about for weeks now, what's the boot order? That might be the more interesting of predictions. Who's going home first?
I kind of feel like Laura M's going to make her way out of the Redemption Island debacle. It could potentially be Hayden. Either way, whoever gets out of there is going to be the first boot, unless they happen to win immunity, which I don't see happening. After that, it's going to be Sierra. I think Jervis, Monica, Tyson is the final three.
Yeah, I agree. I think, actually, I could see Laura M. winning immunity very easily. She's proven us an ability to do that, more so than the people that are on the island. In fact, she's had to stay a little hungrier. Maybe Monica has been about as strong as her. Here's my crazy prediction, because I just want to throw one more out there. At the beginning of the season, I was throwing out more crazy predictions, and they actually landed. Laura M. comes back, she wins immunity, and then gives it to Sierra and gets voted out.
Ooh, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I don't know how it's going to happen, but if it happens, I look like a genius now. I will say that my way back, before the season ever started, where I had to pick why I thought somebody would win, the reason why I picked Sierra was basically because I thought her mom would be a significant force in the game, and then I thought a mom would always just kind of step aside and let their daughter win. Now, this episode showed maybe not so much.
Yeah, Tina proved you wrong tonight.
Yep. I will say, though, I think that if Katie doesn't drop those keys, it might be a little different. But maybe at that point, Tina was just like, oh, she's never going to pick those keys up. I might as well just get out of here. So my prediction could come into play one more time. And it wouldn't even be that dumb. If you're Laura M., you have to know at that point that your daughter, who's been defying the odds and doing these big moves, and I imagine people have been coming off the island like, oh, you can't believe she did this, has a better chance at winning than you do.
You would hope she'd recognize that, yeah.
I mean, ultimately, it wouldn't help as much as if Laura could do it at Final Four, because again, I just don't see Sierra winning at Final Four. So yeah, I do think it's Redemption to Allen returnee, unless it's Tina, but I don't think she's coming back. Then Sierra. Final three. I don't think Tyson sweeps. I think a vote goes to Monica.
Agreed. I think Jervis gets the shutout, though.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I wouldn't have thought that until last week. I thought Jervis would have gotten, some people would have been like, hey, old Jerv. And he could have argued something that, it was joint decisions, and I didn't want to be the threat that Tyson was. But I think he's just turned too many people off since then.
Right. I would have given him a couple votes previous weeks, but at this point, I feel like he's alienated enough people that it's over for him. Yeah, I don't think he pulls a single vote.
All right, and it's almost over for us, and this what has been a fun season of talking about this show. So tune in next week. I'm not quite sure when we'll have a podcast, but it won't be over the weekend. We'll record not long after Sunday night and break down all of the happenings, and I imagine there'll be some celebrating on your part, and it should be good.
Yeah, and keep following us on Twitter. We're at Purple Rock Pod. Send us your questions. We'll try to get out some info about the finale podcast that we're going to do. We're going to try to work in some special surprises into that. And then also we're going to try to, at some point in the off season, get you some sort of material. We haven't really worked out what that's going to be yet, but we'll try to give you some podcasts in the off season.
And one last thing. If you're listening to this, there's a more than likely chance that you visit the AV Club from time to time. They are currently doing a reader's poll, and amongst the questions they're doing is about podcasting. So if you could go on to that podcast, if you're so inclined. We're not saying that you necessarily have to vote us for best podcast, because frankly, this isn't even my favorite podcast. But they do have a question about what podcast would you like to see covered in Podmas? I think that would be kind of cool if they gave us a little bit of a review, unless, of course, they say that we're amateurish and we don't post on time.
That's totally accurate criticism, though.
Yes, it is. But yeah, so if you're so inclined, feel free to vote in that poll and give us a little shout out, and let's see everything come full circle.
Right. And if you feel like sending us an email, you can hit us up at purplerockpodcast@gmail.com. Other than that, I think we're on Tumblr somewhere. We have like a WordPress that I think I updated once or twice.
And you can leave us a voicemail on Skype at JRPurpleRock.
Yeah, you should do that too, because we like getting your voicemails. As long as you keep them nice and brief and preferably entertaining in some way.
All right, so we'll be back in less than a week to talk about the finale and the season overall. And like Jeff Probst, we probably won't say any words to people that weren't interesting in the part of the game.
That's right. Good luck, Tyson.
Here's a prediction. Here's one last fun prediction. Jeff Probst spends more time at the reunion talking to Brad Culpepper and Rupert than he does either of their wives combined.
I think your odds are pretty good on that.
All right, so until next week, I'm Andy, he's John, and we are something.
Ta-da! Theme music.